Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hey, Rob, it's Jackie.
And it's me, Diana.
Oh boy, well, it is so nice to see everybody. Unfortunately, Jackie had some big meetings, so she is joining us live over Zoom. And speaking of live, this is a live episode. It's only live if you're actually like here watching it. But if you are a patron on Patreon, you can check out, I think we should have the video up, or at least the audio up. So it might be a little more loosey-goosey. But if you're listening to this in the main feed, then it's going to be very serious and edited down.
We always keep it professional.
Keep it very professional. Like, you're not going to hear our original code words, which were not safe for work. You're going to get the new code words. But what is it we're editing down?
Yeah,
what is it we're doing a live episode about? Someone else want to do it? Who remembers the spiel?
This isn't a podcast about code words. It's a podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. And tonight we have a very special topic chosen by our Patreon members. It's all about switching focus or switching fields within ABA.
Wow. Well,
you're out of a job, Rob.
Just keep going, I guess. Speaking of switching fields, I'm going to the unemployment line. The old podcaster's home, I guess. Yes, that's right. As voted on by our patrons, we had 3 different topics. We had direct instruction, which was so close, and someday we'll win and we'll do an episode on it.
It will never win.
You're just going to wear those members down.
We had COVID articles, which shockingly were people were less interested in talking about, and changing fields, which I think is part of the zeitgeist these days. You know, the idea of how does one start in a field, get trained in a field, and then decide, dear Lord, after the last 2 years I've been going through, I need to do something totally different. But as we know from our ethics code, it's not so easy. While the principles of human behavior may be universal, your ability to apply them to a certain problem or population or setting are not. They are very specific and must fall within your scope of competence. Shucks. I know you're all hoping that we were going to say, and since it's behavior and behavior analysis is the best, you can do whatever you want. Just get out there. Just start practicing.
I mean, yes, get out there, but don't start practicing alone.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Get out there, do different things, but do different things in a way that is ethically cool. And
ethically cool, that's the word.
Ethically cool. And
get the new code. The new code. It's got its hat on backwards. It raps with you, you know. Knows all what the teens are into. It's a good code.
Is that what the teens are into?
Knows what the teens are into.
Wow.
All right. See, if it's a live episode, you got to see us laugh for a while.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not like last week when we laughed for like 7 whole minutes.
That was Jackie started crying. We laughed
classic.
so hard. We have so much fun here on the podcast, folks, that Jackie laughed so hard, she cried, and I think it went from laughing crying to legitimate crying about halfway
Those are the best ones.
To actual crying, and then I was like, I got to get out of here.
The best ones for me are when I'm cutting an onion, and initially I'm just like, I'm just like crying because of this onion. And then all of a sudden I'm like, am I actually crying? Am I upset? What am I upset about? What's happening? And then when it's over, you feel like this like cathartic release. Like you actually cried about something, but you were just cutting onions. Or were you?
I know why you humans cry, but it is something I can never do.
You know, I feel like this actually segues pretty nicely into the topic that we have for this week.
I don't understand how that does. Please
I was hoping that you would just tell me how.
Well, I think, I can do it. I'm really good at these. I'm so good at transitions. When you're crying about your current field, you might then be thinking about what might make you happier, what more aligns with your values, and how you can re-specialize your master's degree into something that's going to be more fulfilling for your later life.
Oh, okay. That was pretty good. Pretty good.
That was actually great.
Nicely
done.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking tonight about that. Why would you change your field? We're also going to talk a little bit more about what's the difference between competence. What is competence in a field? Because I think some folks see it as sort of weirdly subjective. Some folks see it as, well, it's in my ethics code, so as long as I feel competent, I'm probably okay, right? Question mark? Not exactly. And then we're also going to talk about what steps do you take to enter a new field within the realm of behavior analysis, i.e. a field that has already been identified as sort of falling under the, ABA or behavior analysis umbrella. And then what do you do if you say, you know what I want to do? bring behavior analysis to pie making, a field that has very little research about human behavior in pie making. But you know what? It might be possible. And we're going to talk about some research as to how maybe you can make that dream come true.
Did you say that because you were thinking about pushing daisies?
A little bit by the end of my example, yes. I didn't start there, but I ended with pushing daisies.
Great show.
Great show. You know what? I always wanted to like it more than I did. I'm sorry.
What?
I am sorry.
I love Lee Pace.
I love Lee Pace, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know, just it never did it for me. Christian Chenoweth was there.
Yeah, I know.
Shy McBride. Well, so many. All right, so we've got a couple articles we'll be discussing
Wait, that's my job.
tonight. Oh, there you go. And we got one extra classic that we've already talked. Well, two we've talked about in the past, but under slightly different circumstances. So we thought they were relevant because they got cited a lot. So we thought we'd bring them back and maybe do a quick run through of them. But we've got some new ones too.
Okay.
Let's start with the new ones.
All right, so we have several articles that will contribute to our discussion tonight. The first is a call for discussion about scope of competence in behavior analysis by Broadhead, Quigley, and Wozinski, published in Behavior Analysis and Practice 2018. The next is recommendations for respecializing in a new ABA practice area. I know. And that was published by the BACB itself, lo and behold, in 2020.
Ooh, they did a really nice redesign in this area. So full disclosure, if you go to the BACB website, they have this little PDF, and then they have videos of all of the topics that you can respecialize in.
Oh, that's cool.
Under subspecialty in ABA, there's a ton, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's like one of my favorite new resources that they have.
I will have to check that out. But we're also going to discuss two articles with Christina Alligood as the author on them. The first is Branching Out, Finding Success in New Areas of Practice, and that's by Alligood and Gravina, Behavior Analysis and Practice, 2020. And also, Casting a Wider Net, an analysis of scholarly contributions of behavior analysis graduate program faculty by Alligood, Anderson, and McGee. That was in Behavior Analysis and Practice 2019. Mm-hmm. And what's the other one, Rob?
And then this is one that is highly cited. It's a little old now, and we discussed it when we had Dr. Megan Heineke on the show. That was really very specifically in the realm of acquired brain injury, which was the topic we were discussing on that episode. But again, the points are very salient and 100% relevant to the topic, and that is expanding the consumer base for behavior analytic services, meeting the needs of consumers in the 21st century by LeBlanc, Heineke, and Baker from Behavior Analysis and Practice 2012. So those.
I just like that you said 100 like that. I just picture it being like the little like emoji where it's like 100.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That works.
It was 100.
It was 100. So those are our articles for tonight. Again, we talked about expanding the consumer base article. We talked about the article, I'm trying to remember, the Casting a Wider Net. We actually talked about that in a grab bag a long time ago. Alan, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I know that as a newer clinician, I already see like the need to explore this as a, like, do I need another credential? What's the best path for that? Because working with, individuals on the autism spectrum, very fulfilling. But some older clients have needs that might be beyond what behavior analysis traditionally targets. And so do I want to pursue something like marriage and family therapy or clinical psychology? Diagnostic services across the country are very, very underserviced and hard to find, especially in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So that's, again, do I want to commit myself to a, 6-7 year clinical psych PhD journey to become a licensed psychologist? So that's why I'm here, and that's the kind of things that I see in the field. So just wanted to throw that out, because pie making's fun, but I can see more close to home uses too.
I suppose. Though you're
right. When you and Rob are not afraid of the dual degrees either.
No, and I think one of the sad parts of a lot of what we're going to talk about is sort of the subtext of this entire topic is, yes, there's a way to do it, unless you are old and have a lot of dependents, in which case, and by old I mean like our age, in which case, you're going to have a tough time of it. If everyone's good, or maybe you got a 2-income household, perhaps you can make it happen, but it might be some tough going. So make sure that you really are ready to switch jobs. But if you are still in graduate school or just getting out of graduate school and you're saying, you know what, I don't know if autism treatment is for me, well, boy, oh boy, are there a lot of great options out there for you. Why don't we start by talking about why one might want to change fields? I mean, I think that, one easy reason people might want to change fields is just you've been in the same field for a long time and our science continues to grow. There continues to be new research and new, other individuals branching out. And sometimes you see what they're doing. And you say, that seems so cool. I can't wait. I want to do that too. Maybe I'm getting a little tired of the population or the setting I'm in. I want to work with animals, or I was working with animals. Now I want to work with humans, or I want to go into OBM, or I, feel that there's a need in, like Alan, you were saying, in the diagnostics, are you a marriage therapist? Because I think it's just a needed after this pandemic. Just a lot of kind of just fun professional reasons that you might say, I'm going to do something different. But what are some other reasons that you either have read about or seen out there, folks, for switching fields? Like, why would that be a thing? I mean, we just pick a job and you want to stay in that job forever, right? Like in the 50s and 60s, you work at the same company and you never leave and you retire with a gold watch, I think. That's still how it goes?
At our job, you get a lamp.
When you retire?
Mm-hmm.
Like a nice lamp?
Don't know.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I've never seen a lamp.
They haven't shown it to you?
It's a pretty nice lamp. It's
I love
a very
lamp.
fancy lamp. And if you're even longer, sometimes you get the chair, but usually most people just get the lamp. I think, I've been thinking a lot about this too. I like to say that I haven't been in the field that long, but I've been in the field long enough to be in the field long, right? And I think that people might switch the field because they might be, burnt out with the current situation, right? Demand is high for behavior analysis right now. And when
right now,
it's so hot, right? But when you get older, it's sometimes harder to keep up with the fast pace of working with like young children, if that's what you were doing, right? Like running after them and getting down and getting up and, I know for me, that was like one of the main factors that I decided to like switch from working directly with clients to being more supervisor and more in a faculty role, because just my body couldn't handle it, right? Which is so sad because I'm only 41. But I was feeling it. And so that might be one way. Or it might be that your values have changed as you've gotten older, right? And you want to make a bigger difference in something that's closer to your heart, right? So I know that a few of our colleagues, they had long, illustrious careers working with autistic students of all age levels. But what really was hitting home for them was dog training, right? Was working with the animal population. And so they did what they needed to do to then be proficient behavior analysts in the dog training world, right? And so they're finding themselves so satisfied now because that's where their values lie and that's where they're most interested in, right? So if your interests change, just like Skinner said, right? If you find something interesting, drop everything else and look into it. I think sometimes it's going to happen, right? We're not going to have the same interests that we did when we were 20 than we are when we're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Hopefully when we're 70, we're retired and just thinking philosophically about things and writing papers. But, right, like our interests are going to change, our values are going to change. And why not have a job that aligns with those interests and values?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like a lot of people, I got into this field through a special education route, and that's always going to have a special place in my heart. I always wanted to work with that population. And I feel like that to me continues to be of interest. But through my studies in behavior analysis, I also fell in love with the science of behavior, right? The science of learning. And that is separate to me than working specifically with this one population, right? So I love learning about behavior and thinking about the applications of our science and using it to interpret and understand the world around me in a lot of different areas. So for me, it's just a natural curiosity to want to look at the application in varying ways and thinking about how we can broaden I don't want to say like the use of behavior analysis, but more like our scope of understanding of behavior analysis, to me is really fascinating and exciting. And maybe other people are thinking like me in that way as well.
For me, I just want to get rich fast. So I go where the funding sources are, right? You know, there was funding in education. So that's where I went to. And now I'm doing podcasting. That's where the millions are. I'm becoming those podcast millionaires you hear about. Soon I'm moving into the YouTube creator, hotel down in Florida, where it is. I got to find it first. But once I find it, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be a content creator. That's what I'm doing. Not really. I just... But new funding streams certainly could be a reason you might decide to switch fields because, getting a job
I think that is
important.
Is one reason why people don't switch fields currently.
That's where the money is readily
that
known.
Sounds, crass. I think it's more that right now they're
hiring.
It's very clear if you're going to stay within like ASD, DD population to understand like how I can use my degree and also, eat and live and pay my rent and stuff like that. But if you say, I want to explore dog training, right? For example, you're going to have to pave your own way. It's not to say that you can't do that, or like fitness coaching, like, some people do that, but you're not going to very easily like just go out and apply for a job. You're probably going to need to do something entrepreneurial. And if you're passionate about it, then it can happen, right? But it's going to be a tougher go than just staying in the status quo. I
know. My real passion would be, I would like to see, behavior analysis in video games. And I saw a citation in one of our papers tonight, and then I looked it up, and it was just like some conference presentation, which thanks, but no thanks. I can't get to that conference now because it happened already, and I don't think it was recorded. So I was very frustrated. So, hey, maybe there's still some realms. But then I kind of worry all you'd be doing is like, how do I get people to do microtransactions for my crappy mobile game? I feel like that would be what they'd be looking for. No, that doesn't sound fun at all. I'd more want to be like, how do I make people use environmental cues to know where to double jump or to find a secret behind the waterfall? There's always a secret behind the waterfall, except sometimes there isn't. It's very frustrating. All right, so there are a lot of reasons you might want to change fields. Let's start by really addressing the elephant in the room, which is the reason you can't just quickly change fields is because we are ethically bound to practice within an area of competence. Now, this is good for a lot of reasons, one of which would be that you probably aren't doing a very good job if you are practicing using kind of more general principles with a population or in a setting or with procedures that are not sort of ones that you are fluent in, that you've been supervised in. So you might harm your client. You might give a bad rap to other behavior analysts who are trying to branch out into that field too. No thanks, we're not hiring any more behavior analysts because the last one came in and did such a terrible job that we assume you're all really bad. So there are a lot of reasons that you want to practice within a level of competence.
That's not good.
Of course, certainly just being ethical is one of them. But what exactly does it mean to be competent? And so that is Dr. Broadhead and colleagues' article, which again, if you're watching this live or you're watching this early on the Patreon feed, we already did an episode. We actually had. They might say, when they were going to talk to that guy? Yes, we did. We had that episode already. I was getting ready for this. I was like, wait, I feel like I just saw this guy. Yes, we did. We had Dr. Broadhead on the show. We had a great conversation, but that's coming out later. Unless you're listening to this on the main feed, in which case you already heard that episode. Whoa. Behavior analysis of time travel, I think, is a good one. So
that is a new area.
Yeah, I mean,
no one's looked at that yet.
No one's looked at it. Doc Brown, he's not a behavior analyst. I don't even know what he is. He's a kook. So
he's a doctor.
But what is he a doctor in? Physics?
Yeah,
maybe.
Probably.
They never mention it.
He's got to know. I mean, he knew how to make the flux capacitor, so that's probably.
He hit his head and he was able to make a flux capacitor. It was not necessarily because of engineering.
He's an engineer.
He was rich. His family was rich.
He's an engineer.
Okay. Mm-hmm. He's a doctor of engineering.
Yeah.
In any case, when we talk about things like our level of competence, we also have to talk about our level of confidence. We have to talk about our scope of practice. And how do these terms relate? How are they different? And so in looking at Dr. Broadhead's article, scope of practice is pretty easy. It's what is it that you are allowed to engage in according to your certification or licensure body? That's your scope of practice. So that's going to be pretty specific depending on what state you're in. I know some states are very specific about behavior analysts can practice in this field only. Other licensure boards or states are a little more fluid as to where people can practice. But again, it has a lot to do with the training you get to get your credentials, to get your license. Scope of competence is going to relate to the idea that you need to be able to do tasks related to your job at a level deemed proficient. Who deems it proficient? I mean, you, the practitioner, other people around you. So it's a little bit more subjective, though not subjective to the idea of like, if you believe it, then you're competent. Not quite that subjective.
No, that's not the takeaway.
But there's a little bit more to it than just like, some skills I think do have, a level of proficiency that you must master, but a lot of them it's sort of, did someone in the field tell you were competent at this?
Of the honor system.
A little bit.
Which is not necessarily great.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have mechanisms right now for demonstration of, proficiency beyond, getting your field work, knowing the task list, and then seeing who you studied under. Mm-hmm. And where you completed your field work, right? But there's always a necessary interpretive step there. Yeah. Like, oh, they worked at this type of place, so they probably know about challenging behavior, or they probably know about EIBI, etc. Mm-hmm. But there's not anything definitive.
Yeah.
That tells you.
Alan, you raised your hand again. So polite.
I just was thinking that one place that you kind of see us making changes within the field is what the supervision component. That is now a much bigger part. You need extra training, and like me as a newly licensed behavior analyst, have to, in my first year, if I'm supervising like a BCBA or a BCBA doing their field work, or would-be BCBA, I have to have someone mentor me, and I have to keep track of that. And because supervision, we've come to realize, is bigger than just checking off boxes, which it always has been. But we need to make sure that newcomers and new behavior analysts had good supervision. And that's just an area I think we do see that, thinking about like Diana's research and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Definitely true. So a good example they bring up in the article, and I like some of the examples they have here, because I think it can be hard. I know for me, I have those manic episodes of behavior analysis. I can do anything, like I'm in an 80s gangster movie. We can do it all, folks, with behavior analysis, but it's not quite the same. So, for example, I know how to treat aggression. I learned to do it in my practicum. I learned to do it in graduate school. I worked with lots of students. I worked with students with disabilities, students without disabilities. But the example they give here is, what if you were asked to work on treating severe aggression with a stroke patient? Am I competent in working with that population? Well, kind of not exactly, though, because, right, I can do treatment, and the mechanisms of human behavior are the same, right? I could do a functional analysis, and I could find, what the function of the behavior would, and come up with a treatment plan. But have I ever worked with a stroke patient? Do I understand the medical complexities that are going to come with an individual having a stroke in terms of how it impacts their body, whether or not I need to work and collaborate with physical therapists or occupational therapists due to loss of motor function that might impact or sort of change kind of my definition of an escape maintained response or an attention maintained response? The answer would be no, not really. But then it gets even harder, because it's not like, nope, sorry, Rob, incompetent. You are never going to be allowed to work with a stroke patient who engages in severe aggression. It then becomes a little more about, well, could I engage in some amount of work with another individual who has worked with stroke patients to become more competent? Then the other wrinkle of, what if I'm the only behavior analyst in the area who could work with this person? So it's not going to be a matter of, could I refer this individual to another practitioner? I am the only practitioner. So I'm going to have to somehow become competent. Will I be competent enough? Am I confident enough in my abilities? So there are a lot of factors that are going to go into competence and go beyond just like, you didn't do it in grad school, you don't have a supervisor. The answer, therefore, is you're not competent, and refer away. It's much more complicated than that. And also an area where you might want to or need to build up competence. How would you do it? So there's kind of some questions, that Matt in the article and colleagues kind of go through, and they even set up a really great model of competence. So when we're looking at competence, there's certainly lots of steps that go into both as an initial, training practitioner, as someone who's getting ongoing training related to how much coursework have you done? Do you know the literature? Do you have supervision in this area? Those are kind of the big questions as you start and as you continue on. But then when you want to look at sort of their model, they look at 3 areas related to both competence. So do you know what to do? And confidence. how much do you actually think you can affect change? So they're a little bit different. One has to do with, I can do these skills. The other is, I think I can generalize the skills I learned to the problem being presented at hand. Dr. Broadhead lays out 3 domains of competence. One is, am I competent in the procedures and strategies that would be necessary for treatment in these areas, in these settings, with these types of clients and consumers? You know, for example, can I identify function-based treatments based on consumer needs? That would be an example of a procedure or strategy. However, the actual procedures are going to vary. So I can come up with a function-based treatment is not going to be the same for an adolescent with problem behavior versus an adolescent with a feeding disorder. You know, you may have some similarities into sort of what treatment you'd need, but who do you collaborate with? What additional knowledge do you need to bring to that case? Those are going to be very different, even though in the end, the procedures might somewhat be similar. Another piece, again, for competence is going to be, what's the population that I'm working with? Because again, the same procedure is going to look very different depending on which population you are working with. So for example, I'm working with someone with mental health conditions versus I'm working with an autistic child. I need to develop a reinforcement program. Okay, they might be almost the same reinforcement program, but they're not going to be exactly the same because you're working with adults with mental health issues versus children with autism, right? Different populations. And then finally, setting. How independent am I in performing all of these skills in some sort of a setting? So for example, like education versus business. Education, again, some of the plans might be the same. You know, how do I train in education versus how do I train in business? A lot of similarity there, but it's not going to be a one-to-one correspondence. So those are the 3 domains of competence that Dr. Broadhead lays out. And then the 3 domains of confidence. Again, I know how to do my job. Will the skills I have in those domains generalize to the current situation I am in? How effective do I think I can be based on my past working with similar populations, similar settings, similar problem behaviors or topics? So those 3 domains of confidence, again, have I been supervised or have I done peer review in this area in a case similar to the one that's in front of me? How much literature review have I done with the type of problem I'm being presented with right now? Again, more you've done, the more confidence you have. And then what's the match that currently exists between the resources that I have available and the resources that are required? And again, some of that is I've dealt with, you know, problems similar enough to this one and the resources I had were XYZ. Do I have those resources now? Perhaps it's a population I've worked with in the past, but a problem that's slightly new, so I might need more resources. So what's the resource match right now? And again, it's not like there's, oh, just fill out this form and you'll know for sure that you are competent and confident. But as he does so very well, Dr. Broadhead lays out from this kind of an analysis of competence with a checklist.
One thing that I think you need to keep in mind too, the checklist is really helpful, but there should never be a time in any behavior analyst's life where they don't have experience in a situation with a specific population or a setting where they're like, I know the basic principles, I can do this, right? Because in the world now where we can reach out to people, we can have mentors that do not live near us, we can have, you know, we can touch base with the leaders in the field, we can email them and ask them, you know, to help us, we can do that. I really want to make a strong case that there should never be a time where a BCBA is like, I'm the only BCBA around here, so therefore I can treat all of these things, because that's not the case, right? Even if there is a general practitioner doctor, right, and somebody comes and they're not sure, they don't understand like what the disease is, they can call someone, right? There's always someone to call. So going through this checklist is going to be helpful. But if you as a new BCBA or even as a seasoned BCBA find yourself in a situation where you haven't worked with a population, right? You don't know anything about the population, find yourself in an uncertain setting with uncertain clients, right? You don't know enough, do the literature review and contact someone, right? Because you could be doing more harm than good.
Yeah. I think that's why I like this checklist, because it gets at the idea of you should always be asking yourself these questions. Like, it's not like only ask this question when something brand new is in your face. Like, you can ask this question for every problem that you face professionally, because the answer is either going to be...
Every time you get ready to go out the door, right? You're like, do I have my wallet, my keys, my phone, my competence in this area? Right? You just want to make sure it's part of your checklist, daily checklist.
It's easy to have a checklist. And yeah, Jackie, you're right. Because if you're answering hi to all of these, okay, great. You don't really have to email somebody to double check your thoughts. But if you are looking at this checklist and you're getting some, lows or maybe, it's not that you can't, it's that, well, what are the steps you need to take? And of course, the step might be you can't, but it's not like an automatic you can or you can't. You either have to do it alone or you can't do it at all. So again, it's a pretty straightforward checklist. You're just rating yourself as I feel low, competence or confidence, medium or high, or I don't know. I don't know is an automatic. Reach out to somebody.
No, that's also not a great sign.
Well, it's not a no, though. That's a reach out to somebody and ask them their opinion. Like, hey, how competent do I sound here? How confident do I sound in this situation? And the questions are pretty simple. It's, question, again, it's not empirically validated. It's a sort of just for like a starting point using kind of a behavior systems approach to sort of figure out, okay, what are the answers to these 4 questions? Therefore, what should I do? And it's question 1, what's my relative level of competence with the procedures, strategies, populations, and settings in the situation I have? Low, medium, high, or I don't know. Number 2, same thing, but confidence and relating to the past experiences with a similar problem, familiarity with the literature on this problem, and available resources to help you tackle this problem. Low, medium, high. And number 3, what's the similarity between this current problem and the context of this problem and your past experiences, your past resources, characteristics of participants in research that you've read on this subject, the conditions that you read about in this subject. So these are your top 3. You ask these questions to yourself. If the answer is unknown, you reach out to somebody who's published in the area or who's done treatment in this area, and you give them some information, and then they can help you figure out, yeah, it sounds like you are totally competent for this. Sounds like you are totally I was going to say incompetent, but you're low competence for this problem. And then based on that, you can decide, all right, I am high competence, high confidence, I'm good to go. I'm medium or high. I need to sort of weigh each of these questions to determine, like, what are some other factors? Am I the only behavior analyst around? Is there a good enough publication history on this problem that with a little bit of support with someone over Zoom or maybe someone who can watch, some of my initial sessions, you know what? I'm probably going to be able to handle this. I'm probably going to be high competence, medium confidence. It's probably going to be okay. So you sort of have to ask yourself, like, where do I weigh these? So if you're getting a lot of mediums and highs, what's most important? Is this dangerous? In which case your competence is probably important. Or if you don't have the resources that you need, but you have a lot of literature and you have a supervisor, okay, even though you're a bit medium on some of these questions, you're probably still going to be okay to go ahead with that extra support and with your literature review in place.
Yeah, and one thing we have to put out too is that a lot of the time our verbal reports may not be as accurate as we would want them to be, right? Mm-hmm. So we all remember, we've talked about it a lot, the BOLU 2019 article where the survey went out asking behavior analysts how competent they were regarding cultural practices and cultural responsiveness. And everyone said, yeah, I'm doing great. But no, I've had no training. No, I've done nothing to further myself, right? So I think even just saying, like, if we fill out this self-checklist, we have to be really true with ourselves, right? And be like, you might not be good, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you need to do things, and that's okay too.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the other good point is that just because you currently don't feel confident or don't have competence in an area doesn't mean that you can't get competent in that area. You just need to do the work in order to get there. So if anyone's out finding this conversation discouraging, it's not meant to be discouraging. You just have to make sure that you have the proper training before you embark onto something new.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. No one should feel like, if I'm not competent now, that's it. I can't ever deal with this. It's just, this is the framework of which you want to be assessing and self-assessing yourself. Or you could. Again, it's not empirically validated. These are just starter point questions to start looking into, well, if I have to ask myself about my confidence and my competence, okay, here's a framework you could try. You could try this out and see, if it gives you some answers that are relevant. But then you have to act based on your responses. And if you're scoring yourself low, great. Be conservative. Score yourself low. Find another individual to help you decide if maybe you're being harsh on yourself. Maybe you're being exactly right, and you should be referring your low. You should refer this case to somebody else. Hey, then ask if you can help supervise, help the person, looking at tape afterwards, or maybe get training in the area afterwards, right? You can still do learning.
And so that's where I really want to pull into this new BACB resource that they have. So if you go to the About Behavior Analysis, I know I'm like the BACB.
It just sounded like you're like going to pull, like you're like parallel parking, like right into the spot reserved for the BACB.
Pulling into here. Winning. But if you go to the About Behavior Analysis section and you scroll down, they have an ABA subspecialty resources. So what they've done is they've made these one-sheet fact sheets, like one-page fact sheets for all of the different subspecializations of ABA, such as sports, clinical behavior analysis, education, brain injury, behavioral gerontology, pediatrics, health and fitness, treatment of substance abuse disorders, which I did not know we did until I looked here. Someone said it to me once, and I was like, we don't do that. And I was like, oh, we do. Look at that. Yeah. So they have these fact sheets followed by these lovely videos of people discussing their subspecialties. So people that are in the field working there, right? So like Pat Fryman's is on behavioral pediatrics. John Lutzker talks about interventions in child maltreatment. You know, John Austin talks about organizational behavior management. So these are like very awesome resources that weren't there, right, before 2020.
No, it's always a surprise every time you visit.
I know.
The website.
Right. And so that was awesome. And then I think it's nice to know, like, if I'm like, I don't know what I want to do next, right? I can go and watch these videos and read these fact sheets and see if that's something that's interesting for me. And if it is, right, then they've provided this really nice additional resource that we were going to talk about, the recommendations for respecialization. And they give you kind of a step-by-step on how you can go about getting into these different fields. So, you know, props to the BACB for adding this in there, because I think it does serve a need for clinicians that do want to maybe switch their focus.
Yeah. Well, why don't we, before we take our break, why don't we just very quickly, so we've talked about competence, we talked about what competence kind of means. Let's talk about the BACB recommendations. I want to respecialize in a new area. All right, great. This 2-page sheet is an excellent starting summary. Let's go very, very briefly go over the points laid out. Then we'll take a little break and we'll talk about maybe it's a little more complicated than that.
So with the BACB, the first thing that they recommend is that you do your research, right? So make sure that you know where to look for some key articles that are going to be helpful for you to figure out what exactly you would be doing in this field. They also encourage you to reach out to organizations that specialize in that. So you could go to the special interest groups through ABAI. You can reach out to these different authors, right, of these research articles. You can look for non-behavioral organizations, right, outside of behavior analysis that you could join and see, is there actually a job for you, right? You don't want to be like, I'm going to switch my job and there isn't a job. You would want to make sure that there is a job, you know, where you could have it and that you would get paid doing that job. And then I think the most important thing here before you make the move is to speak to experts in the field, asking them, what are the next steps that I need to take in order for me to be competent in this area, right? So full disclosure, at one point a couple of years ago, I had a mental breakdown and I was like, I need to switch my job. I need to switch my life. I'm going to be a dog trainer. I didn't do it yet, but my friends did it. But I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I found a behavior analyst that was working as a dog trainer at the MSPCA in Boston, Dr. Cherry Bright, who I love. And I stalked her at a conference, ABAI, and sat next to her once and sob storied to her, which is kind of awkward. And so I don't recommend doing that. But she did give me, like, she's like, if you want to do this, you need to make sure you're committed. You have to take all of these dog training classes. You have to go to all of these dog training workshops. You have to do this, this, this. And I was like, oh,
right.
It was a lot. And you know what? Of course I would have to do that. But just hearing it, I was like, okay, maybe I'm good with my life. So once you do that research and you're still like, yes, then you have to start planning how you're going to start building competence in this field, right? So you're going to see, do I need to do an extra certification? Do I need to find someone to do mentorship for me? What sort of things will I be doing now in my new job? I'm going to do a self-assessment, like Broadhead said, to see like where am I lacking in those skills? And then what I'm going to do is develop a training plan that will help me gain access to that. So I'm going to have a plan. Like this month, I'm going to do this. Next month, I'm going to do this. Ongoing, I'm going to be talking to my mentor. And with that training plan, I want to make sure that I'm gaining all of the skills and knowledge that I need in order to start off in this field, right? So hypothetically, I might be doing this while I still have my other job, right? Because while I'm in this training and prep period, I'm not getting paid, right? Nobody wants to hire me to do something that I'm not good at yet, right? And then once
Seems unlikely. You're more of an apprentice than a journeyman.
Yes. Oh, good job, Diana. Then
that Sturbridge Village trip's really paying off, Diana.
And Johnny Tremaine, be careful with that crucible. Go ahead.
Then, so once I'm going into this position, right? I've gained a mentor. I've got relevant experience. I feel like I'm doing great. I've gotten my relative certificates that I need. Then it's up to me to maintain competence within that field, right? To develop strategies to grow as a professional, grow in my practice, make sure I'm staying current with the relevant literature. I'm part of a professional organization that I can ask questions to, right? I need to contribute to the dissemination of behavior analysis. And so I think those are really key. It's simple, but so complex, right? It's like, get your ducks in a row, do them, and then make sure you're maintaining them in a row.
Mm-hmm. Folks, if you want to certainly read more about this or see more about this, it's certainly the BACB website, but also you can listen to our interview with Dr. Megan Heineke, where we talked a lot about her article with Dr. LeBlanc, Dr. Baker, related to this. And again, the steps themselves...
Number 156.
156, thank you, Diana.
Sure.
The steps themselves, not too dissimilar. You're increasing your professional competence. You make sure you get a job in the field once you've increased that professional competence. Then, you might need to figure out, where is the funding going to come for this job, because I'm doing something a little beyond what, the company is looking for. But the steps really do relate a lot to figuring out what you can do, figuring out what you need to know, and then making a plan to know that and then get a job related to that task. And if it's in a field that's already sort of under the umbrella of behavior analysis, or we have a lot of behavior analysts in the field, you have a really easy, well, I don't want to say an easy time, but it's an easier time finding a mentor or finding a supervisor or asking a professional who's published in the field, hey, what certifications do I need? Because they can speak pretty clearly to, well, these are the certifications I had. These are the certifications most jobs will be looking for. This is what you're going to be looking at in terms of initial salary, what jobs you could get in the field, because these are the companies that like behavior analysts already, because we have some people. So they're going to be able to give you a lot more detailed information there. But what if you want to do something a little off the beaten path? We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to branch out into other areas where behavior analysis has yet to venture. We'll be right back.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD-level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu.
See you there!
And we are back talking all about changing fields for behavior analysts. But before we do that, I want to remind all you listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE approved. And by listening to our episode, you can earn 1 learning credit. All you need to do is finish listening, then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com/getceus, that's GET-CEUS, and enter in a secret code word. You can also find this link in the show notes. And the first of our 2 secret code words is cucumber. CUCUMBER. Cucumber is a green fruit, because it has seeds, right? And it's delicious with hummus, a ranch dressing, It's like long fruit. What else do I know about cucumbers?
Well, there's also the sea cucumber as well.
Yes, but you just need to know the regular cucumber. The English cucumber.
The English cucumber is different.
That's different than it was. What's the cucumber that you get at the store here in America?
Actually, I buy English or Persian cucumbers, but the American cucumber has like a different skin on the outside that's not as tasty.
Wow.
The English and the Persian one, you can eat the skin.
Jeez. You can't eat American
You can,
cucumber
but
skin?
it's like thicker and waxier and it's not as good.
Wow. It's amazing.
And the seeds are larger.
Yes.
Jeez.
Rob.
This is amazing. No, I'm not that's not
I know,
facetious.
you're like legitimately amazed.
I'm like, oh, wow. What?
Cucumber.
I'm going to get into fruits and vegetable behavior analysis, I think.
That
I don't think the principles
not a thing.
will apply.
nice try though.
Rob out in the fields praising the cucumbers for doing a good job of growing. To
I
see.
know. Rob misunderstood changing fields.
Yeah.
Hey-o! You're the funny one. You should talk. You should share more of these jokes, Diana. And now we are back talking about changing fields in behavior analysis. And if you have our live episode, you got to see all sorts of shenanigans while we put together our code words. You got to hear all sorts of fun behind the scenes footage. Too hot for podcast. All right. Anyway, let's get back into why are you laughing? Why is everyone laughing at me?
Okay.
Is there a level of competence or confidence? I got confidence about podcasting.
You have a lot of
Competence? Question mark?
I don't know. We've
Big
done
question
over
mark.
200
Big question mark.
episodes.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. So glad you would join us. It's not even book club. I'm kidding. All right.
Okay.
I feel like if you do 200 podcast episodes, you can probably be competent in it. Probably. We'll see. So let's start by talking about one of the areas that were discussed. It's really hard to join a new field if you don't have a mentor, you don't have a supervisor. But the question becomes, the farther afield you get, is there even anyone who could mentor you? You know, are you literally the first behavior analysis to stand in that exact place and say, I'm going to become a behavior analyst in X field? No one's ever had that idea. So then what do you do? Well, perhaps not. Diana, please share a little bit more about Oligood and colleagues' article on casting a wide net.
Yeah, so this one we can review pretty quickly because it's really more of a supporting piece, I think, to this total argument than a straightforward comparison or contribution to the topic. So this Oligood article is the one from 2019, and it's where they were evaluating what type of publications varying instructors in behavior analytic graduate programs are producing. Because they kind of wanted to see, are people just publishing in behavior analytic journals, or are they branching out, casting a wider net, would you say, into other areas of research? And from there, sort of extrapolating, if the instructors are looking at other areas of research, then that might mean that they could later function as mentors to their, now graduates in those areas of research, or that the graduate students are getting maybe a varied experience in their grad program. So that's kind of what they were trying to figure out. So they reviewed the publications of 1,233 verified course sequence instructors across 224 behavior analytic grad programs from the years, I wrote 2000 to 2105.
Whoa.
I know, but I think I meant 2015.
These behavior analysts working in future technologies. I mean, that's
so much
great
research
field.
to be done.
100 years of research.
Amazing. And they, just really briefly, they found that these instructors published in 715 different journals.
I didn't know there
In
was
those
so many journals.
15 years. I didn't either. I found that to be the most shocking piece of information because honestly, almost all of the research that we publish is in like 20 journals, right? But turns out there's lots of other places that things could be published, and at least one behavior analytic instructor published in 715 different journals over this time period.
They've been busy.
Yeah, I know. So that was surprising to me. And now the majority of the things that were published were within the, main journals that we typically publish in. They also looked to see if the journals were ABAI or SEAB supported, like BAP is an ABAI publication, like that type of thing, because they figured that those were like our core journals as well as our very high quality journals too. And of these 224 programs, they found that 199, so 89%, had at least one publication for the program. Of the 224 programs, 137, so 69%, had a publication in an ABAI or SEAB journal. Now, so that was by program. So almost all programs have some type of publication. Most of them have one in one of these kind of top tier journals for us. And then of the instructors, so there are 1,233 people that they were looking at their research, 741 of them, 60%, had at least one publication. And 356 of them, 48%, had one in an ABAI or SEAB journal. The mean number of publications across the instructors was 12. So that's like across 15 years. So I guess it's like kind of like averaging one a year, which is, pretty good. The median is 6. The mode is 1. I had to look up what those mean. The median is the middle. The mode is the most common. Why are you laughing at me?
You haven't been teaching like 5th grade math recently?
No.
I love that, Diana. You make me so happy that you didn't remember what the mode was.
I think the last time anyone hears a mode is like, you might need to know this, 6th graders.
Yeah, for real.
I love the mode. It's my favorite mathematics.
Love the mode.
So the mode is the most common. So most commonly people had one publication. But, we're a young field. And so then the exciting, or what I found to be the surprising piece, is that 350 of these journals only had one instructor out of this whole lot of 1,200 publishing in them. All right? So that is kind of good in that it means that, there are journals out there that are being read by other people other than behavior analysts who are encountering the type of work that behavior analysts typically publish. We don't know what the topics of the journal articles were. So we're kind of making a bit of a jump and saying like, oh, it's probably like different applications of our science because we didn't actually get those data.
Yeah.
But our authors say this, this represents that the instructors are thinking outside of the box and they're making broader scholarly contributions. The students should be happy to see this so that they can be trained in diverse areas. It could be that the researchers are doing non-behavior analytic work. It could be that they're collaborating with other departments at their school, right? Which is a good thing. Both of those are good things. This is an extension of a Dixon et al. 2015 study, and Dixon noted that there was a positive correlation between the overall number of faculty publications in the ABAI and SEAB journals specifically and the percent of graduates who passed the BACB exam. They didn't do that type of analysis here with the larger array of journal publications, but they, sort of were trying to build upon that previous work. They said, scholarly work of the instructors doesn't guarantee that there's going to be a high grad rate or a high passing of the exam, and passing of the exam does not guarantee competent clinicians. But these are all sort of potential variables that could be at play when we're thinking about what type of instruction are our graduate students getting in their programs, and do they feel potentially more competent in any of those areas after receiving these types of instructions from maybe, instructors that have a wider variety of interests than have been seen previously? Does that then therefore lead them to be better at taking the exam or better clinicians? We don't know, but it's possible that these are important things to consider. So I feel like this is an interesting area to think about, right? An interesting way to try to get at that piece of the puzzle. But there's still a lot we don't necessarily know. Yeah. And there's 715 journals out there.
That boggles the mind. I just, like you said, Diana, I want more specificity as to where are the areas. Like, this feels promising, but ... in that it could be that they're journals that sort of already cover areas that are not really, that we wouldn't consider like changing fields that significantly. So is it that big a deal, or is it sort of just a happy slight benefit? That would be really interesting to know.
Yeah, we also don't know anything about the quality of the work that's being published or the type of work. Is it more like, experimental studies, qualitative research summaries? there's a whole variety of quality of journals as well, and that wasn't discussed in this article.
Yeah. All right, but it should be something that if you are interested in branching out, you may be able to find a supervisor or mentor or graduate program that has some extra focus. It possibly is easier than maybe we originally thought, but again, we don't know for sure. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it does tell us is that when you are in an academic position, you have more freedom to explore areas that don't necessarily receive funding in the same way that, ASD does. And through that, additional lines of application of our science could be discovered or strengthened. And if you find something like that seems kind of like a newer area, but you're quite interested in it, then probably the person that knows the most about it is one of those instructors who's publishing in that area. And you could, go to school with them if you haven't gone to school yet, or you could reach out to them to see if you can't set up some type of, apprenticeship situation so that if it's something you're really interested in, you could learn more.
Okay. All right. So our final article that we'll be discussing tonight is branching out. So again, Allgood and Gravina, we've seen those names a lot. And while I think the points that they bring up in this article in terms of how can we bring behavior analysis, or how might you, the individual, take your knowledge of behavior analysis and move it to a field that isn't sort of established under the potential umbrella of behavior analytic jobs or behavior analytic fields, the steps might be slightly similar, but there are some extra caveats you're going to want to bring into that discussion. You can't just jump into another field, as we already talked about. But if you're going into a field that doesn't have a lot of behavior analysts already, or maybe you're the first behavior analyst to say, I'm jumping into that field, there are going to be a couple extra steps to take.
Yeah. I just want to point out that these two authors are highly credible folks to be giving us this talk, because Christina Allgood is a obviously behaviorist, but an animal behaviorist, and she trains animals for the Disney company. And then Nicole Gravina does excellent OBM research.
Can I complain for a second?
Yeah.
I saw Dr. Allgood at Babbitt one year, and it was amazing performance. So this has nothing to do with Dr. Allgood at all. However, I sent an email to the only address I had at the time. This was many, many years ago. I think it was maybe the first year of our podcast. I was like, I'd love to talk about this. And I sent it, and I got a rejection form letter from the friggin' Disney Corporation, which pissed me off to no end because I spend a lot of money on their crap. So Bob Iger, Bob Chapek, you screwed up fast passes, and you screwed up my ability to interview a behavior analyst for my podcast. So shame on
maybe
you.
You should try again.
I'm not spending $6,000 on your Star Wars hotel. That's a lie. I already spent. I made the reservations for the Star Wars hotel.
I hope that's not true.
I spent $50,000 to get a bunk with Chewbacca. So, your money, my podcast millions are going to good use. I'm kidding, Donna.
We'll talk about that later.
I'm kidding. I didn't get. I'm frustrated though with a lot of Disney decisions.
Okay, well, I bet Dr. Allgood had no idea that happened.
Oh, I don't blame her at all. Okay. I think I blame Bob Iger. I think it's his fault specifically.
That's fair.
And when I went to Animal Kingdom, they were very nice about talking about their behavior analysis program.
Okay.
Anyway, all right. Jackie's giving me the move it along time. This is what people they want. They want the inside scoop. So
they don't when it's over an hour. That's what we know. When it comes over an hour, people don't want it. So
people love long podcasts. It's very popular. So when we're going to branch out, it's important for us too, because I think as our science, it would be easy to say, let's just do, treatment of problem behavior. And there's still room there. It's not like we've answered all the questions. However, it is important for us to move behavior analysis beyond sort of the areas that we're known for. There should be common problems. We're a science of social importance, right? Looking for social important problems to help support. So we should be looking for where are those problems. We need to move outside kind of the clinical educational settings, which is about where, in the 2016 BACB survey, what was it, like 93% of respondents said, I work in like schools, or I work with autism or developmental disabilities or some sort of education, right? And about 3% said I work in OBM, sports and fitness, or quote unquote other I don't even know what that other was, but there's only 3% of the 7,000 plus respondents to that survey. So clearly, we're not really moving outside of those areas too much, at least as of 2016. The other challenge is going to be that you don't have a lot of grad programs that are necessarily going to be saying, hey, we're going to teach you to be a behavior analyst and other. Those aren't a lot of programs that are just directly out there. You're still a behavior analyst
if you're working in these other areas.
No, I know, but the other part, you're not getting the extra other with your behavior analysis. You're probably getting behavior analysis to work in X, Y, and Z, depending on the program, depending on your the certification program
right.
or graduate
really
program you're in.
Be more generally applicable.
I've made grad school
it may depend on
what can I say?
Your field work.
Yes. So if you're interested in moving to a new career path, well, you're going to start again with graduate training. You're going to start with your mentorship. Ideally, though, instead of just sort of like, I'll just go to whatever graduate program, I'll just take whatever supervisor or mentor I can find, you're going to have to look for that mentor that hopefully also has a study or research interest in that practice area. But again, it's not necessarily going to be easy to do. So Allgood and Gravina say, all right, maybe you can't find that like magical unicorn. Why, yes, I am a behavior analyst who works in the video game industry and is a graduate professor that I'm looking for. Where are you, professor? Email me, please. So what else can you do in the meantime or along that path? Well, step one, like you were actually just saying, Diana, is get really good at behavior analytic concepts and fundamentals. So while you may be able to be a little sloppy with some of your concepts or fundamentals when you're going into a very specific field where you're going to get a lot of additional training and a lot of ongoing supervision, if you're going into a brand new field where you might be the behavior analyst on site, or maybe they don't even call you the behavior analyst in your job description, you need to know your basics, backwards and forwards, because you're not going to have a lot of people to help you, give you resources in that field potentially. You're going to have to make a lot of decisions that are based on basic concepts and generalizing, or how well do those concepts generalize, and using a lot more of those fundamental skills. How do I make an operational definition in money-sucking microtransaction procedures, right? That's not necessarily out there. How do I measure them? Some of that might be out there. What assessment strategies am I going to use? You need to understand why the science of human behavior works to use it in new settings. It's a lot of problem solving as well. Certainly, you want to be in a good master's training program. I heard that Regis College master's training program is pretty amazing. Haven't done it myself. I've just heard. I heard it in the ad break. But again, if you're looking for graduate programs, you want to find the ones that are saying, we're going to teach you to be behavior analysts. Full stop. That's what you're learning. You're going to learn about research. You're going to learn about using research. You might have some areas in which you have access to faculty members who have moved outside of sort of the traditional kind of ABA fields, right? So they publish on a certain topic that you can get some additional information. Or maybe you just are looking for a mentor. So, do you have resources at your grad school of, I know someone who does that, right? If you're not in school anymore, like so many of us, well, okay, let's start with literature review. Look outside the behavior analytic field. What literature exists that you can take into your own practice, that you can synthesize into what you already know? Maybe join a research lab in that area. Maybe just take more classes. Maybe you don't need a second graduate degree, but you just need some additional classwork to be done. Maybe it's not as hard as you think. It probably is. But maybe it's not. You don't know until you look, right? Until you try. Or hey, maybe you say, you know what? I love this so much. Like you were saying, Jackie, I'm so passionate about this. I am going to go back to graduate school and I am going to get another master's degree in a related field. Dr. Allgood and Dr. Gravina mentioned, okay, hey, you want to work with animals? For example, wildlife conservation. That might be relevant to you. You want to work in OBM? Business, public health. You want to get some degrees in that area.
Bookkeeping,
gun repair, VCR repair. Maybe you don't have a specific idea exactly what you're going to do. You know what? Get your PhD. Now, again, they're very clear. It's not like if you get your PhD, you'll be able to become a behavior analyst in any field you want. Because they also say you need to know someone working in those fields to ask, is anyone going to care that I have my PhD in behavior analysis? Because if the answer is no, no one will care. Save yourself some time. Maybe you don't want your PhD. Maybe you want to get started getting a job in that field or working as a volunteer in that field instead. Maybe instead you're not interested in some of those paths, or maybe you've been told that's not an important path. Okay, Could you start in the field that you already got training in and then slowly branch out? So instead of moving sort of laterally, move sort of vertically in terms of your population you work with, the types of treatments that you're able to use. Again, anything you can do to sort of make your experience more like multiple exemplar training is probably going to benefit you in the long run, regardless of whether you change your mind and say, nope, my passion is education. My passion is OBM, something that, is a little bit more of an established field for behavior analysts. All right, so you got to do your learning. You got to find your community of practice or mentor. Again, you don't want to practice outside your competence, so you better find someone who can tell you, what does that even mean? What is the level of competence I would need to jump into this new field? Somebody ideally who can give you support, give you training, tell you what trainings are important, tell you which degrees you might need, give you feedback to your practice, and actually tell you when you're competent. You could do this possibly by saying, I'm just going to take that entry-level position at a company in the field I'm interested in. You're definitely going to get supervision. You're probably going to get some training, right? And you have a community available to help you. You also have less responsibility because you probably got hired at the bottom of the rung because that's great. You went to graduate school for behavior analysis. I don't know what that is and I don't care. So here's your job. So again, you're going to be starting a little lower, but that makes it a little easier in that you're not responsible for anything that important when you're starting necessarily at the very bottom of a rung, right?
And you're independently wealthy, so it's fine.
And hopefully you're independently wealthy.
Yeah.
So that you can do this. You can, again, just contract a mentor. I do love that their recommendation that you get what you pay for. So if you find some mentors like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll just do this for free. You might want to be like, let's have a financial arrangement about this mentorship. Because, on the one hand, I read that and said, oh, that's so sad that people want to get paid for something. Then I thought, you know what? If like 5 people wanted my mentorship would get really bad really fast. And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm really sorry. I actually have a life beyond you. I'd love you to do well in this field, but I can't like walk you through every step of the way. But if it's part of, a contracted service, okay, then, you have an ethical responsibility to provide a good service. So, hey, could be. You can find you can find your mentors at any local shop or a special interest group from maybe AI. Another suggestion I liked was volunteer to help with projects. Again, might not be a bad idea because if you can help like a research lab or a company is doing projects that you think you might be able to help out with, you might learn, I hate this job. I'm glad I'm not switching fields and paying for my second master's degree or my doctorate. I'm just going to go back to what I already knew how to do. They also recommend a community of practice, which I wasn't quite sure. This one, if you're just like meeting people who work in a similar area, you can sit and share. This to me just gave me flashbacks of like, come on, everybody, let's have our journal club. We'll all get together. It'll be so much fun. Doesn't everyone want to get together and chat about work? Mm-hmm. The answer was no. That's why I started a podcast. Or why we started a podcast. Again, if you want to skip ahead, maybe just find a job in your practice area. You're probably going to have to look for jobs that don't say behavior analyst wanted.
Right.
So again, what words are relevant to what you know how to do that you might be able to say, I can do that, or that's something I learned in graduate school. And again, it's probably going to be an entry-level job. This is the section where they tell you, you might want to have a backup plan in case you decide, you know what, I am making pretty good money and my family needs me to support them. So taking this new entry-level job in the field of my passion is not what I'm going to be able to do. So you do have to, again, weigh other concerns with your life. This is not something, and they're very clear, this is not something that like anyone can jump into a new field. Mm-hmm. It is a very dedicated individual or passionate individual who is going to do this.
Yeah, I think you really have to think outside the box here as well. It's kind of like how, like I have an English undergrad degree and you can think like, well, that might be helpful in a lot of different ways. People like to see when you have an English undergraduate degree because it indicates you probably are a good writer.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily get you the job. So you might even need to think about your BCBA as sort of an enhancement to some other field and that you could bring, our approach of thinking about something, observationally and logically and applying that in a new and different way. So you might just kind of sell yourself.
Mm-hmm. Their final recommendation is going to be, no matter how you're going about this, who's your mentor, what's your entry-level job, be very realistic and humble that you are starting in a brand new field. I know there's nothing anyone wants to hear more after spending all that money on graduate school or perhaps getting their doctorate that, hey, guess what? You're not so smart because you just went to all that trouble to prove how smart and qualified and capable you are. But you're starting in a field where other people have done almost exactly the same steps as you within that field itself. So there's a chance that, a very good chance, probably 100%, I'd say, that they know more about this field than you do. You may know more about the science of human behavior, but you didn't get a job as a behavior analyst necessarily. You got a job as someone with a background in behavior analysis in whatever this brand new field is. So even if the people around you, they don't know behavioral science, guess what? It's not relevant necessarily to the job. You're the one who has to demonstrate that it is relevant, that it is important that you have this background, and you should be a part of this team. And they'd be sad to lose you, right? So be humble. Use humility. They bring up the Dunning-Kruger effect, which I think you didn't name it that, Jackie, but that idea of when you don't have expertise in a certain area, you are often unaware of your deficits. So my colloquial reading of that is like, you don't know, you're too stupid to understand how bad you are at this job. But it's more your inexperience. I'm being tongue in cheek with that.
Right. Well, it's like a complicated pattern. It's like initially you know that you know nothing, and then after a little bit of experience, you think that you know a whole lot, and then as you learn more, you realize that you actually truly know nothing, and then only after like many years of study do you finally go back up on the upswing that, oh, actually maybe I do know something.
Yes. That's always a fun feeling. Whatever your job is, make yourself useful. Find the jobs you think you can help out with and show what you know. Again, don't show what you know by explaining, it was easy. I used the principles of behavior analysis, because nobody wants to hear about the principles of behavior analysis. And they make that point very nicely in the article. What you need to do is demonstrate all the ways you can do things, how what you bring to the table is helpful in your new field. Hey, look, I could define this behavior. Hey, look, I made a component analysis. Hey, look, I use behavior skills training. Don't mention it. Don't say that's what you did. Just be like, look, I did the thing that you all wanted to have happen. And then as people are saying, wow, this is amazing, or wow, what good work you brought to it, that's when you might be able to start talking about a little bit of jargon or a little bit of how, like, oh, well, this is something I learned in graduate school. I think it's really helpful. I'd love to show how we could use it, or I'd love to see if this were a useful component. So again, make sure what you're doing works. Then you can go back and maybe name some of the principles, some of the procedures that you used. Don't start off with that. So realistic and humble. And those are the recommendations. Again,
advice.
Not easy recommendations, but the recommendations if you want to go beyond just changing fields to something that is already sort of starting to value behavior analysis, to a field that has no idea what behavior analysis is. The steps are somewhat similar, but you're going to have to be doing a lot more of the legwork, and you're going to have to be really proving yourself. And you're going to take it slow, because again, if you can't demonstrate a level of competence, you're going to make it harder for the next person who says, you know what, I bet Field X could benefit from the science of human behavior. And you don't want to be that person. Don't be that person. Please. All right.
Boom.
So now, everybody out there, you're ready to get a new job? Great. Let's do it tomorrow. Everyone, quit. We're finding new jobs. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
There really is no need to do dissemination station in this, because there is no dissemination. That was our life.
That was
Yes,
it. The whole
exactly.
episode was it was one big dissemination station.
I should have chugged at the beginning.
Summary. Find someone who knows what it is you want to do and ask them, what is it I'm supposed to know? Then make a plan to learn it all.
And then do it.
Or say, no, I don't want to do that. That's too much work. You can stick to your field. And go back rejuvenated in the knowledge that, all right, I'm going to double down on what I already know.
Right.
It'll be great, I'm sure.
There are options for you if you really want to change fields.
Yeah.
But you got to go through a lot of steps to ensure your competence.
I know. I mean, video game developers are out there and you're like, behavior analysis, Send me an email, abainsighttrack@gmail.com. I'm happy to have you tell me how incompetent I am and what I need to learn. That sounds fine. Glad to do it. Super exciting. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our show. I think we did it. I think we've made sure everyone knows this relevant research and has some ideas of what they need to learn if they're interested in branching out in the field. I want to make sure we do our last code word before I totally forget. It is fudge. Fudge. It's a delicious chocolatey treat, or maybe it's got...
Only in America.
What? What's fudge in other countries?
Vanilla.
Wait, so if I say I want a fudge in another country, they're going to give me something with a vanilla base?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah. Fudge is chocolate fudge.
So I want to ask for chocolate fudge. What if I want a panucci? Can I get that?
I think that's still called that.
Did I say I want panucci?
What is
panucci.
All right, move along, kids.
All right.
Okay. Sorry.
It's fudge.
My
Fudge
name
the
is
code word.
Fudge.
My name is Fudge. All right. Well, First, let's start off by thanking all of our patrons who voted for this topic. We were really excited that you chose to do it, and we were really happy to share our discussion of this research, and we're really happy to get to read and learn more about this research ourselves. So thank you very, very much for voting. If you're interested in voting on future topics or future book club episodes, you can always feel free to join us at patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where you're getting this way ahead of time, as well as a free CE for this and for our book club. So we got a new one coming up. We just voted for The Nurture Effect. So that's coming up in a month. So get ready, folks. If you're getting this on the free feed, well, thank you so much for listening. We love it if you subscribe and kept on listening to ABA Inside Track. Maybe left us a review, some feedback. A couple other ways you can find us. Certainly the aforementioned patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, as well as our YouTube page where these episodes go up with the subtitling feature. Our main website, where abainsidetrack.com, which has links to all of the articles we discussed, as well as to all of our old episodes. And of course, you can always feel free to email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro and outro music. Thanks to Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music. Thanks to Alan for being here and giving me a hard time as always. You know, I love him because I keep having him come back and I keep being excited to see him, even though he's going to tease me relentlessly about something. The pairing must have worked. And of course, thanks to Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for all the editing work he's going to do. So if you're not watching the live episode, you missed all the swear words, comments about what we were doing on the break, vacation planning, all my Disney travel tips, all that good stuff.
I'm sure those stayed in.
I'm sure they all stayed in because they're gold. All right, folks, we'll be back next week with another fun-filled episode. But until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.